He's probably the most charismatic manager that the game has known. I accept the point that I do not know every single manager that has been in Brazil or Portugal. But Brian Clough would say, well, who cares?
My guest tonight is Brian Clough.
The press christened Clough Old Big Ed. In the early 70s, he was much more than a back-page lead. Football had its first TV evangelist.
He became massively big at the time. Not only that, he was worth listening to.
God gave us a bit of ability to kick a ball about on a football field, and we tend to forget everything else. And then suddenly at 33, 34, we're out of it, and we don't quite know how to fill the gaps. Well, this is lack of education.
The number of people who said to me, you know, I don't like football talk, but I never miss Brian on television. They call me in and say he's on.
In the studio once more today, Brian Clough to give his views on the action you're about to see.
You have to be yourself. And for him, it was as easy as falling asleep.
They've played 7 matches, they've conceded 14 goals, they haven't won a game. Any defender worth his salt would want to get out of a side like that.
I mean, when Brian spoke, it was riveting.
There's certain players in the game who couldn't take the ball from my wife, and Bob's one of them. They might be lucky enough to have a run in a cup, but as far as league's concerned, they haven't got a prayer.
I think he identified with the people, the supporters.
We've got it all wrong then, myself.
I'm afraid you have, yes.
He spoke a language that they understood.
Gunter Nexter makes Jimmy look like a navvy.
Well, I don't agree with that, Malcolm. Quite frankly, the only bit I liked was this bit with me in it now.
He'd be thinking to himself, I wonder what Brian Clough thinks I'm thinking. That's what he'd be thinking.
Please forgive me, this is not anybody imitating me. I have got a bit of a cold. And I do bloody talk like this all the time.
Arrogant? Yes, but what's the difference between superconfidence and arrogance? Cassius Clay was arrogant, but we loved him because he was bloody good at what he did.
And we're delighted to welcome Muhammad Ali, particularly as he has something rather important to say to all big match viewers and to one contributor in particular.
There's some fella in London, England, named Brian Clough, some soccer player or something. I heard all the way in Indonesia that this fella talks too much. They say he's another Muhammad Ali. There's just one Muhammad Ali. I'm the talker. Now, Clough, I've had enough. Stop it.
Well, are you going to stop it?
No, I want to fight him.
I'd sort of sit, you know, ready for what he was going to say, you know. I wasn't... We sort of got used to it, you know what I mean?
My mum says to me, why can't you be like Bob Wilson? And not upset anybody, and Bob doesn't swear, and Bob doesn't do that. And, you know, if she's not careful, she'll just renege completely, and my man will have a new son, and they'll call him Bob Wilson Clough.
Peter once said to me that we've got to win football matches because of the things that Brian says. He would say things about his bosses or the FA or whatever that the man in the street wanted to say, I think, half the time.
You stop Brian Clough talking, he might as well cut his right arm off.
Sadly for Derby County, club chairman Sam Longson was not amused by his manager's natural gift for upsetting the establishment.
And the chairman. Come on, let's get down to sanity.
And in October 1973, an increasingly tense relationship unravelled into the end game.
And that's all, gentlemen, at this stage. No questions, whatever.
Well, he resigned at the finish.
There was an argument, and then Brian and Peter, I think, actually signed letters of resignation, which was obviously a bad move.
Do you see this as a personal...
To Clough's astonishment, the board accepted his decision.
I resigned and they've accepted it.
I think one of the points was that he was spending too much time on television.
Brian was never going to be told, certainly by his chairman, what he should be saying in football. And it was sad. 2 men who respected each other initially should fall out in the way they did.
Brian, why have you resigned?
There's not enough time, there's not enough film, there's a million reasons.
It's the biggest mistake they made, him and Peter. There's no doubt about that.
Will you stay with Brian, do you think?
Yes,
Whatever happened?
Yes.
Mr. Clough! Go in!
That night, Brian Clough was back on TV.
If you've been wondering what this is in my hand, it's a nail. And it's either going in Poland's coffin or it's going in Sir Alf's.
Do you remember the goalkeeping exploits of the Polish goalkeeper?
Incredible save!
Then he proceeded to knock England out of the competition.
Hunter, right foot!
But he was absolutely adamant he wasn't a very good goalkeeper and called him a clown.
That other clown at the other end.
Brian, you keep calling him a clown, but in fact that fellow has made some fantastic saves and he's kept England...
But that wouldn't have worried Brian Clough one jot, you know. 3 days later he would have been still saying he was a clown.
It's only opinion. Makes the world go round.
If Clough was a master of self-promotion who revelled in playing the agitator, he reserved his greatest contempt for one manager and one club.
What did Brian Clough think of Leeds United?
Hate.
Disliked them immensely at the time. Disliked the manager, Dan Revie.
Steady!
Yeah, hated each other.
I think they sold themselves short as men and as players.
He didn't like their methods, their way. They did have quite a reputation, didn't they?
Dirty.
Dirty Leeds. I mean, that's what people say, yeah.
Giles, a two-footed tackle.
Brian Clough's attitude towards the Leeds thing was that we were dishonest.
The book is coming out, and Leeds don't like it.
I would say that the villain of football is the one that does the most things wrong.
Well, I don't think Leeds ever got the credit for playing the type of football that they played. I mean, I played in a Leeds team that played as good a football as any Brazilian team or any team I've ever done.
A goal! A typical Lorimer effort.
I think they could have been a little bit more loved.
He wanted them to keep up the standards that his teams would keep up.
He had a point, didn't he? When you looked at Leeds' disciplinary record?
Yeah, of course. Well, in life, I don't think you find the nice guys win very much.
Yeah, the bloke who pinches £2 million will sit back in his bungalow in the Bahamas or wherever the hell he goes and says, well, I've been an out-and-out thief and I've had the most success. It just depends which standard you're looking for.
Might get caught, though.
Yeah, well, Leeds have been caught a lot of times.
But in 1974, the league champions needed a new manager.
Leeds United directors announced that they have accepted the resignation of Mr. Don Revie to free him to accept the appointment as England team manager.
And rumour spread of a marriage made in hell.
I want to be associated with the best players in the best club, and Leeds are just that.
We were rats to Brian Clough. He couldn't stand us.
I read it. I was quite horrified.
We shall be back in just a few minutes with Brian Clough. See you then.